What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the Fringe. As I said earlier, I was going to run this video. Uh, Alberta independence, it's not going away anytime soon. In fact, one of the funnier things that's going on is as Alberta currently has Tommy the Commie, as we call him, or Tom Lakazak's bogus petition going around to try and keep Alberta in Canada. But first off, it's not even a constitutional question on his petition. But what's interesting about it is that it's going around on the socials that the reason they won't tell anybody right now how many signatures they've garnered or an estimate as to the signatures they've garnered. Keep in mind their deadline is the end of October. It's because they don't want the right or the right extremists poking fun at them, which tells me they don't even have a portion of the signatures required, which really at the end of the day, folks, considering the resources they have, how much they've spread out, really goes on to say a lot about how Albertans are feeling right now. I think it's going to do more than just boost the notion of independence in this province. It's going to start telling our provincial governments, if those people won't sign a petition, they sure as heck are ready to go. One of the things I had this week was an explosion on Wednesday's stream where I had stated Danielle Smith had lost my vote. In fact, I should clarify what I meant by that. It doesn't mean that it's indefinite that Danielle has lost my vote. It's that recently we've shown videos where she's kind of talking out both sides of her mouth. And I understand, again, everybody's explanations. She's playing 4D chess. She can't say certain things. But the problem is she's been talking out both sides of her mouth. The issue that I took up with Danielle this week was that Mark Carney came to Edmonton, of all places, when he was on his retreat to announce what projects were going to be fast-tracked nation-building projects. Danielle Smith had given him a list of requirements like getting rid of the No More Pipelines ban, the oil tanker ban off the coast, getting rid of the emissions cap. There's a plethora of other things that she said would be necessary for Alberta in order to get their products to market, or else Mark Carney would face a national unity crisis. Now, she gave him a 6-month timeline for that, and where I was upset is that as Mark Carney made the announcement of fast-track projects, he mentioned how Nova Scotia was getting wind turbines, because we know how productive those are, and absolutely nothing for Alberta. In Edmonton, on Danielle Smith's turf, in her home, he comes in and says, yeah, we're not going to do anything. Danielle Smith then approaches the media and says, I'm going to extend my 6 months till November 1st. I'm going to show more about that in a second. But this is where I said Danielle essentially lost my vote. What I mean by that is she can earn it back anytime she likes. But the way that Albertans need to treat this, ladies and gentlemen, is that votes aren't guaranteed. We're not going to simply just vote for Danielle because she's not Naheed Nenshi. We're not going to vote for her to keep out another evil and just allow her to keep passing the buck. One of the biggest issues, and it was discussed on our live stream, is what happens if Danielle does nothing when the clock runs out on her ultimatum to Mark Carney. I'm so thankful that a video had been sent my way of her recent Alberta Next panel in Grande Prairie, where somebody basically asked the question. And he was very firm about it, stating, well, if you don't show some teeth, you're going to lose your job. And the audience seems to agree. I think the writing is on the wall for Danielle Smith that you don't have to come out and say something. And I have reached out to Danielle's people several times. I've asked them, what is the deal? What are we doing here? Even off the record. Like, just give me a little explanation as to where the premier stands. Nothing. Nada. All they've told me is Danielle will not reject a citizen-led initiative. She will honor it. She'll put it on a ballot. The question is what happens if that initiative goes through? What happens if people vote to leave? Will she honor that? Will she respect the will of Albertans? Will the petition even make it through the courts in November, which is now her deadline, by the way, for Mark Carney? I want you to listen to the question read the room here and see where I think this was the best time to ask Danielle this question. Let's take a look.
Appreciate that you're trying to get a better deal from Ottawa, and you're doing a lot. That's great. But any rational person with a cursory view of history knows that Ottawa is not going to give us anything meaningful or lasting. They might give us an inch in regards to the 9 non-negotiables that you stated to Carney, but we are demanding a mile. You need to draw a very definitive line in the sand immediately as far as when is his last day to comply. Otherwise, you'll be seen as having bark and no bite, and you'll be done politically. And I really want you to stick around.
So again, the audio's low here. I apologize. We have raised it as much as possible, but he essentially says, look, you need to show, if you show that you have bark and no bite, you're done politically, and we'd like you to stick around. The audience fully supports this statement. They're on board with that. Danielle has turned a lot of heads. In fact, a lot of people in the comment section, a lot of people on social media are saying the same things. Danielle, you need to step up. You need to realize we're not getting anything. Like, the time for any form of diplomacy is certainly over. We know we're not getting anything. So why extend? Why keep running out the clock? Her response, I'll tell you right now, I'll allow it. I'm going to let her speak, and then I'm going to tell you why I'll allow it.
There are many more systematic problems in this country than just those 9 items, and the only way to deal with most of them is to become an independent country and take as many other Western provinces with us as possible. The West wants out.
You too just got in under that 45 just by the hair on your chinny chin. Premier, would you close this one for us?
Well, I'll tell you where I started. So my starting point was that I wanted to see some changes in legislation by the time they came back into session. So they've come back into session just as of yesterday, or just as of earlier this week, September 15th. The Prime Minister and I have had a really good meeting of the minds on a lot of the things that I've put on the table. Not all of them, not yet, but we're kind of 80% in agreement, which is better than it was with the previous guy. But you've probably heard him say that he wants to have a second announcement on major projects by Grey Cup. So that's kind of my line in the sand, because I have told him that I believe that Justin Trudeau created the separatist uprising in Alberta, and the only way it's going to be addressed is if he undoes a lot of the terrible policies that happened under the Trudeau Liberals. And so I've been pretty clear about that, and I would say that if he doesn't, then there is already one referendum petition out there that is gaining signatures. The other referendum petition has to go before the court to get affirmed, and I gather that's happening in November. And if there isn't movement, then there is a mechanism that I believe different groups have decided to take on to try to put it to the people. And so I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm hoping that I'm able to convince Albertans that we have made enough progress with Canada that Canada can work and we can have a new relationship. But it does require that Prime Minister Carney makes some serious actions. We have to get a bitumen pipeline. We have to get rid of the 9 bad laws. We have to restore our business investment climate. And as you mentioned, that's my short list. So there's a lot more things on that list. But that would be a good demonstration that we're undoing a lot of the damage that's been done to this province over the last 10 years. And November 16th is the date of the Grey Cup. So that's the new line.
So she's essentially asking for 45 more days. I'm comfortable giving her those 45 days, but I am not going to praise anything until I see some action. What I mean by that is Danielle has a very good point. She said, 6 months, they just came back into session. So granted, Mark Carney should not have been touring the world and going on vacation all summer, especially when he only worked 17 days as Prime Minister. But from her standpoint, it seems prudent enough to say, look, if you really want to stretch this out another 45 days, just so that you can have extra verification that nothing's coming our way, fine. But again, the question remains, what happens when that clock runs out? What Albertans want is exactly what this guy said. There's many problems that need to be fixed. We see it as the only way forward is independence. We have to take as many Western provinces with us, is exactly what was said. And I agree with that. What Mark Carney is going to try and do is what he usually does, where he may offer Alberta a bitumen pipeline. He may come forward and say, hey, we're gonna maybe renegotiate the emissions cap. We'll extend it a little further so you don't have as many problems. We can try to bring investment back in. It'll just be a carrot on a stick. Albertans don't want one singular project. They don't want a little bit extra levy on the emissions cap. They want the ability to decide for themselves what's best to get their products to market and encourage investment in the province. As Danielle has stated, we have trillions of dollars of oil and bitumen and liquid natural gas in the ground. It needs to come out. And I know a lot of people are going to be pointing out, hey, Fringe, they just announced an LNG deal out to British Columbia this week. That deal was 90% done in terms of negotiations before Mark Carney became Prime Minister. I will not count that as something being given to us like breadcrumbs to satisfy Albertans' need for a better economy. Danielle is free to earn my vote at any time, but the way I would encourage folks to look at this situation is that votes should never be guaranteed just because you favor a conservative party. That was the problem that got us into this mess in the first place that led to the NDP being in power when Rachel Notley took over. There was a conservative dynasty in this province. In fact, they always called it that. It was people always vote conservative. Doesn't matter what they do. Alberta doesn't want anything else but conservative governments. And that's the way it stayed until people were really pushed to the brink. They'd had enough. You also had a bunch of socialists coming in from other parts of the country that were evolving. You had the unions against everybody. Essentially, it gave the NDP power. Alberta doesn't want that ever again. The problem is that if Danielle is not in her job, sovereignty dies. It can't move forward. Naheed Nenshi will cancel everything. He'll repeal Bill 54. He'll get rid of any hope that Alberta has of ever talking about independence if Danielle loses her job. So I do believe it's important for Danielle to remain in her role. But a vote needs to be earned. And what I want to see is what happens in November. Now, people are going to point out that Danielle said, I don't want it to happen. I don't want these petitions to have to go forward. Her job as the premier is to have some form of diplomacy. It's to push for that. However, what happens November 16th? She drew a line in the sand. She gave a date, folks. It's not just, hey, 6 months. It's November 16th is my date. Mark Carney, between now and November 16th, will not repeal Bill C-69. He will not get rid of the oil tanker ban. He will not do anything that's beneficial to Alberta. So the question now, what happens November 16th? You can see it in the comments down here. I wonder if she even believes herself anymore, says Jeff Rath. Was there for this. It was a great question Alberta wants out. Barb actually was the one who sent me this video, so shout out to Barb. In Manitoba, the separation movement hasn't really started yet. If either Quebec, Saskatchewan, or Alberta separate, then I would hope Manitoba would ask to join the West because the East is done without the West. So there's a very good point there. Because as I've been talking with Alberta Prosperity Project insiders, meaning people who follow them, people who are close, through social media. They research everything, they look into everything. Other YouTubers that I talk to that know the ins and outs of what's happening on the independence front. A lot of people were following what happened in last week with discussions with the APP. I'm going to let Mr. Blanchette talk about his surprise announcement and how people are really reading into this the wrong way. Because this spells success for Alberta. This is where you know Alberta independence is a lot bigger than what people are playing it off as. You've got Theo Fleury, a good friend of mine, tweeting out, really? I'd like to get Theo on the channel in the near future, maybe to discuss this more. I know we've been talking back and forth We've had Theo on before. I'd really like to get him on. His schedule's all over the place. Bear with me, folks. I'm going to bring him on for that. Let me know in the comments if you'd be excited to see Theo make another return to the channel. Let's hear what Blanchette had to say, because, again, people are perceiving this the wrong way.
Give a boost to the sovereignty
Of
movement.
course, if people in Quebec want to remain Quebecers, they will have to think faster and faster and stronger about the idea of having a country of their own, which will befriend with its neighbors. And not a bad timing, because I seem to understand that the numbers of the Parti québécois are not so bad.
Anglais. Monsieur Saint-Pierre Plamondon just had a successful visit to Alberta, where he built a number of bridges with independence leaders in Alberta. Are you planning in the near future to travel to Alberta yourself or meet with leaders of Alberta's independence movement?
I had thought.
So before he answers, Mr. Plamondon was in Edmonton. My insiders have told me that, yes, a meeting took place with APP, with him, that it went very well, from what I've been told. And a lot of people thinking, hey, this means Quebec is going to try to figure out a deal with Alberta. That's not the case. I can almost guarantee you that's not the case. I'm going to let Mr. Blanchette finish up. But I'm going to tell you the benefit of that meeting, what could have come out of that meeting. Because, again, I don't want to quote APP verbatim until they come out and actually discuss this. But I can verify that a meeting did happen with the heads of APP, as well as Mr. Plamondon. Let's hear what Mr. Blanchette says
About it, but I understand that since Paul did it, it is not necessary for me to do that trip. But I'm very open to this idea. We have to start all independentist voices and leaders to explain who we are, what we want, the way we would do it, and what it would be the morning after. We have to do that. This is what I do when I go in Washington also, when I go in Paris or everywhere. And we have to do that in Canada also, because if it comes, we've got to make it smooth and best for everybody.
So, to make it smooth and best for everybody, what they're talking about, because you go into the comments here, not much to discuss. Alberta doesn't need another boat anchor holding us down. The same guy that snorted and chucked Albertans are not unique like Quebecois, hence do not have their own culture, hence why would they want to separate? This was just a few weeks ago. Not surprising, Quebec thinks of Alberta as its colony. So people are thinking that him saying we're interested in talking...
Give a boost to the...
Sorry, we're interested in talking with Alberta, we're interested in, getting together with their independence people. Here's my assumption of the reason they would want to do that. Quebec knows just as well as we do that the show's kind of over in Canada, that the government has bent everybody over and taken whatever they want, and they're only going to devalue our country. They're just going to keep bringing in migrants. They're going to print money to line their pockets. We all know the story with the federal government. I think Quebec sees the writing on the wall, but insiders that I know that deal with the government of Quebec, that talk with them, that have come to me with information, have said, look, Quebec wants out. If Alberta starts talking about seriously going, it gives Quebec the momentum they need in order to have their own referendum and get out. In fact, as Rebel News was running around Alberta doing, Alberta and Saskatchewan doing the done getting screwed talks, a lot of the think tank representatives that were speaking in those meetings were saying, I think Alberta independence would fail the first time round because we lack the information that Quebec had during their 90s referendum. We're not there yet. But if any referendum were to be successful, they think that if Quebec were to have one, their referendum would succeed. So I believe what is possibly being discussed, and again, this is just speculation, I'm not quoting APP verbatim, is what if Alberta were to move forward with independence? They're going to educate Albertans as to here's how you need to do it, here's how things can work. Ezra Levant used to talk about this French, almost like an encyclopedia that had every possible question in it that somebody could be asking in regards to what happens if we separate. Maybe this is Alberta's chance to get a little educated on how that would work. I think by having an ally in the independence forum, if Quebec says they're finished and they're out and they're done, and Alberta at the same time gains its traction, Mark Carney does nothing with those 9 requests. I thought it was 12, but we'll say 9, just verbatim as what Danielle quoted. I think at that point, once independence starts rolling forward, it's going to be a lot easier to push for it, and it's a lot easier to convince people in those provinces that, hey, other provinces are ready to go too. We're ready to get out of here. Do I think it'll be successful? I really don't know. I couldn't say anything until a vote comes up. What I think it will do, folks, in fact, it's one person who's told me this as we've been discussing endlessly what happens with Alberta independence, is that regardless of whether Alberta succeeds or not, if the support is there, Alberta wins. Meaning we then matter at the table. We would be able to negotiate a better deal for Alberta by the threat of independence, especially if it were likely to succeed statistically, or you had the backing of provinces like Quebec. The federal government doesn't want any of the provinces to leave Canada. At least they shouldn't want to. Their actions are kind of telling me otherwise. Again, speculation. But let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think Danielle's going to make good on her promise for the 16th of November now that she's given an official line in the sand date? What do you think that could look like? What do you think about Mr. Blanchette saying that he's keen with talking with the independence movement in Alberta? And do you think that you agree with my speculation, or do you think it's something else entirely? I'm interested to hear what you think in the comments below. Make sure to leave a comment, thumbs up, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Join me live tonight on the channel for Friday Night Fringe, our weekly live streaming show. We stream twice now weekly, with Wednesdays and Fridays, with Mrs. Fringe joining me tonight as we talk about everything that happened in politics, everything we know that's coming up in the week ahead, as well as Q&A within the greatest YouTube community on the platform. I look forward to chatting with you guys outside of making these videos. I most importantly look forward to sitting down with you tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central, every week, Wednesday and Friday here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.